Hello and welcome to my monthly Patreon chat, patreon.com/chillpolyamory if you are watching this on YouTube. This is a time where I like to be accessible to anybody €3 and over to ask me whatever you want about polyamory, either broadly or your situation specifically. And I'm happy to be of service to the best of my ability. People are also welcome to ask me whatever they want about my own polyamorous experience or just life in general. I tend to prioritize whoever is in the room. I try to answer their questions first, but I'm also emailed and DM'd questions, and I'm happy to answer them as well. So hopefully try to get to everybody today. Hope everybody in the Northern Hemisphere is having a good summer. Everyone in the Southern Hemisphere, hope you're having a nice winter. It was a hot summer day today here in Berlin. Okay, we can jump right into the first question. Question number one. I want to fully embrace openness in my relationships by being comfortable with thinking about one partner while being with another and allowing my partners to have similar feelings, even if this isn't planned but might naturally occur. I also want to be okay with my partners reaching out to others while we spend quality time together. I want to feel at ease with being sexually aroused by partners who are not present and accept that this might happen naturally during sex. How to explore these aspects further and learn from others' experiences. Right. So this touches on ease, being relaxed when the thought of another person happens while you're with somebody, that's what I'm hearing in all of those examples. When this is absolutely possible, in general, ease comes from a sense of safety. We are relaxed when we are feeling confident that no harm is going to come our way. So not feeling ease does not mean that there's a problem, and not feeling ease, especially in newer relationships, that's not a bad thing, right? Sometimes there's just organically not a deep feeling of safety yet because you haven't got the track record yet. You don't know for sure. You don't have a long time of them sticking around. So, there might be on some level not that relaxation. Maybe on some level it's like a fear that they won't stick around. So, yeah, ease comes with safety. Tends to be where I guide it, right? So if I'm with somebody and they're texting another partner, and I feel agitated about that. What is that about, right? Is there agitation because I don't feel secure in our relationship? You're not giving a quality time to us? That could be a valid complaint. Plenty of people don't have great time management. Plenty of people will just be mentally somewhere else for an extended period of time when the goal is to bond with you, right? So it's not that you have to be chill about it. Maybe it happens and you're like, this isn't fun and I want to name that. Can you love on me a bit? So it's just information. But if it happens and you're like, this type of situation, I would love to not be activated by. I would love to hear casually about them, or have them enter and exit during our date as a topic or something and not feel agitated by that. If that's more of the situation and you don't feel like it's a threat, you feel like it's more something internal that you're trying to overcome, then yeah, can that be explored? Why do I feel this is a threat? Is it some sort of older messaging that there's not enough to go around, and if this person is is there a thought of them and therefore I'm boring on this hangout, right? Or I'm always going to be second place, or what is the next thought? I'm not okay with this because this. So we can get a lot of info from the context of what the extra thoughts are around that moment. I wonder why. And if it is internal, we can talk about it. It helps take the power out of it. I've even laughed with partners about that before. And there can also be fluidity with it. If I'm having a really bad day and I feel like I've been rejected creatively, I posted something that didn't go great and I'm already feeling hypersensitive, you know what I mean? Then I go on a date and they're paying attention to someone else. Sometimes we can have a bad day. And so we're a little bit more sensitive. that's okay too. So there's a lot of fluidity around it. And I don't think it's objectively better to be cool with having another person be on your partner's mind while they're with you. But I think if you're not okay with it, can we ask why? I was watching this sitcom Schitt's Creek. I'm doing my next video on like my next media analysis video on polyamory is going to be on sitcoms, and that's going to come a week from today for my patrons, early access. And there's an episode of Schitt's Creek where from day one, like this guy is dating two people, doesn't tell them about each other, just like starts kissing them in front of each other. And they're like, wait, I thought we were monogamous, you know? And then now there's this pressure. Oh, but I'm cool. I'm cool. I am a cool person. So this is totally fine. Like they're trying to skip over the part of, I'm not okay and just try and force being okay, you know? And sometimes people will ask me like chill polyamory, like does that mean I have to force chillness? And like, well, I feel like that is an oxymoron. I feel like it's not possible to force being relaxed, you know? No, a lot of my work is on the discomfort. Can we name the discomfort? Can we do this hard work on like, why is there tension and can we untangle that knot? And then the result is usually relaxation or, change of the situation to something that could be more relaxation inducing, So it is, I see long story short, I see being relaxed about that premise. Someone else is on your partner's mind while you're together. I see being relaxed about that as sort of the side effect of this work on feeling secure. And sometimes that just comes with time too, so. I've dated people before that I was like totally fine with it, even happy early on in the relationship. And then later it got worse because our relationship got worse, and I was more upset then, right? So that's what I mean by it's just information and it's not all one or all the other. You never like arrive to being okay with it all the time. Um, yeah. So I hope that helps. Okay, next question. How do I deal with my partner's new relationship going well when ours isn't going so well? So I feel like this is similar to what I was just talking about, like a partner, but this would be more of like if a partner is doing well in one area of life and you're like, okay, so it is okay. Like it is possible for you to be happy and carefree and like thriving, just not with me, right? Like that can be a more elevated version of like you plus them equals good and you plus me equals bad is like the fear there. Um, but I think if we can zoom out and look for a moment, like other ways this can look, because monogamous people deal with this too. Like if a person is lighting up when they're with their friends and then they're grumpy and seem unhappy when they come home to their spouse, for example, that same thing can happen is like, why are you happy over here and not over here? I've also seen it happen where like a person is set on fire creatively, like they're inspired or they're excited and in a new hobby or a new job. And then their relationship is suffering because all of their energy is going over here. And I would liken that a bit to like new relationship energy with a new connection and wanting to do less of the less fun work, which is repair and maintenance on something that's a bit more long-standing or maybe has some messes to clean up. And you're like, no, this is the fun stuff. I want to do the fun stuff over here, right? So sometimes that happens. So it can be more complex when we have two relationships we're talking about, right? Two partnerships. But I also don't think it's so dissimilar from those other things that are not romantic or sexual or partnership related. Like those are not other people that would be comparing. So I think like even though it's like a relationship, is it really one to one? Or is it apples and oranges? Like, is it a very different situation? And we're just comparing it because we both have the label of partner. Um, like if it's not the same dynamic, the same longevity, the same types of things you connect on, the same sex you enjoy, then is it comparable? I think more what I try to look at is if I see my partner is like really happy over here, growing, thriving, and not here, well, that is serving as a mirror to me of like why aren't we okay? clearly there's something in this connection that is changing the mood, maybe not just in you, but also in me. Maybe I'm also happy in other rooms with other people. So, can we ask questions? So, I really think it's more of a prompt, more of a catalyst to do inward work. But as I mentioned, like sometimes time management can be the issue. So, can we ask about that? A person trying to avoid harder work because of the fun stuff, trying to avoid eating their vegetables because they want only dessert type of moment. And that can unwittingly pit partnerships against each other because it can feel like taking away from the, currently struggling relationship to give to the easier, quote unquote, one at the moment. If a person has committed to 2 people or 3 or however many people, if they have said, "I'm gonna give time and effort to you," then are they doing that? And then can we be frustrated with the partner and not the object of their focus? And if it is also suffering from comparisons, can we look at where the comparisons are coming from? Like, it it's not so often that a meta will be like, "I'm better than you, and our relationship is healthier and happier than you." Like, I'm never gonna say never because I have seen some outlandish things that people have said to their metas, and also how much of it is, mental comparisons, how much of it might be comments that your shared partner has made about, "Oh, well, why can't you be as easy as this?" You know what I mean? So, like, can we also see, like, what is fanning the flames of the comparison? Because we wanna try to stop doing that. That's not helpful. There could be anger, grief, realizations that you're having in this moment. Um, yeah, so it's not fun, but it can be a prompt for something productive, hopefully, or at least, yeah, if you don't wanna do that work, you can decide that and realize that sooner too. Okay. Next question in the chat. Having a hard time identifying if I'm poly. The insecurity and jealousy is intense, especially at the notion of a partner dating people with same gender, similar gender as me. I'm bisexual, a sapphic person whose partner is a dude. My partner is interested in dating femmes, and I am drowning in jealousy. How do you identify if this is something you actually want? Sure. I follow up with a question. How do you identify if you're the right partner to be poly with? I've seen your content about how important partner choice is. Yeah. Um, so yeah, hmm. When people say like, I don't know if I'm actually polyamorous, it's not something that you're just going to decide intellectually. Do you have the capacity? Do you know you have the capacity to love multiple people at the same time? To like when you're not feeling activated, do you feel excited and free and calm and optimistic, like imagining non-monogamy? That can at least indicate that, you might be inclined toward it. But there is work that goes into it. Like you're saying, we are going to be confronted more often with our insecurities because there's just more instances of us being faced with it. If we're monogamous, we get confronted with our insecurities too, but this really is like sort of boot camp, especially in the early days. And if you don't want to do that work, like then it's not a question. I'm not saying you don't want to do that work. I'm just saying like if a person didn't want to do that work, maybe they can be polyamorous, but they don't want to, or they don't have the energy or the resources right now. Okay, that's valid too. But then it's not a question of like, can you be? It's a question of like, is this a priority? Is this work you want to invest in? And that's a very personal choice. So yeah, sometimes people will be like, is it it's an evergreen conflict that I don't think will ever be resolved. Is like, is it an orientation or is it a choice? I don't think that's a binary. I think plenty of people will say, this is how I love, and I'm overwhelmed at the moment, or I don't wanna. Okay, like, I think there's an element of choice in terms of, like, how you practice. Um, so can we, like, let go of the big question? Sounds like that's a stressful question. Can I be poly? Am I actually poly? It sounds like that's putting a lot of pressure on you. So instead, I would, like, look at the symptoms that you're saying, which is, like, all of the distress that is coming from insecurity, that is coming from, metamor that has similar gender, you said, to you. Why? What information is that trying to tell you? When we're in distress, when we are anxious, we are like our instincts are trying to protect us. It's trying to get us out of danger. So what is the danger? What is the danger, Is it fear of abandonment? Is it I'm scared my worst fears will be confirmed, that I actually am not good enough for whatever, whatever, whatever. Like, what is the fear? That can be a helpful place to start to know what we do about it or what we can do about it. So, in terms of like what the fear is, if the fear is abandonment, for example, then what would be like signs that you're being abandoned? Would it be your partner is like colder to you or starts canceling dates with you in favor of this other person or people? Like, what would be signs that your brain's like, see, it's happening? Even if it's not, like, what are the optics of it? That can help to name for a partner of like, I'm scared that this literal situation is going to happen because of this bigger fear. This is what, I imagine it when I picture that fear coming true. Then often that gets wrapped into care plans of how your partner can be extra sensitive to that of like, okay, yeah, I'm really going to be thoughtful. Like if I have to cancel a plan, it's going to be because it's really needs to be canceled. I'm not going to do that thoughtlessly, right? We equip our partners with ways to remind us we're safe or ways to say, your fear is not coming true. So we start with the fear, like that can be like a baseline place to start because we don't always know what we need, but we know what we don't want to have happen. So we work backwards from that as a starting point. If you have nowhere to start or you have no idea where to start, what is the worst fear? And then how can that be proven wrong? Or like what can you avoid doing to like exacerbate it? Now, sometimes it's like you're saying, well, my worst fear is that you will fall for someone who's the same gender as me. Okay, why? And do you want that to be something you would ask for? I'm not saying you're asking for that. It doesn't sound like you are. But in that case, then sometimes there is a lot of like internal questioning and where did you get that messaging from that this is competitive, that, someone with your gender is more of a threat to you? Is it literally stuff your partner is saying? Do you have good reason that your partner is comparing? And, like sometimes it's not rooted in, our minds or in messages from society. Sometimes it actually, we have evidence. Like, so can we just ask it a lot of questions of like why and from who? And does this align with my value system? So if there can be pursuit of calm, if there can be pursuit of regulation, then we can have a bit more clarity. That whole water when still is clear kind of thing. So yeah, if you're feeling activated and elevated, I just try to be like, okay, my number one goal is to pursue regulation and to pursue calm. Um, Not being a therapist or a trauma recovery specialist, like that's where I hit the limit of my ability in terms of like offering you suggestions. I would say ask somebody who's trained in that in terms of like what you literally do to seek regulation. But yeah, it's from there, jealousy is it's information. Yeah, I don't think there's a right answer to like if you're the right partner to be polyamorous with, like, do you want to do this work? Are you willing to be uncomfortable? Do you want to be the best version of yourself? Do you want to be bulletproof? Do you want to be like so strong and stable that no external variables can really shake you too hard? That's been a huge value, a huge benefit of polyamory to me, is that it does confront, you have to look at all of the ugliest things, and all of the loudest insecurities and messages, and then work on them, and then talk about them, and then, confront them, talk back to that voice, that sort of thing. And it basically, yeah, it helps you grow even if you wind up not structuring your life in a polyamorous way. I feel a lot more solid and strong in general because of this work that polyamory has forced me to do if I want to have a good time. There is a follow-up that you Did a typo. How do you identify if they're the right partner to be poly with? Sure. Yeah, but I think you're answering that question too. Absolutely. Like, I think in terms of like if you're with the right person or people, are they your teammate? You know? Do they are they like working with you on a shared goal? You know? If you're not okay, are they curious? Are they like, okay, how can I help? You know, not in a way of like, how can I just, I'll stop doing it then. I'll stop seeing them. I'll stop. We don't want that emergency, urgency. Let me fix it for you. That's rarely sustainable and often doesn't actually help. But hey, you're not okay. How can I love on you? How can I remind you you're safe? You know? Like, unapologetically continuing to do the agreement that you've agreed to do, knowing, like, "I've done nothing wrong. I've gone on this date. We agreed that was fine. Like, so I'm not apologizing for that, and I see you're not okay. I wanna love on you. I wanna remind you that, I'm not going anywhere." That sort of thing. If you feel like your partner is your teammate, then you probably can grow together in this in some direction. If it always feels like it's you versus them, if it always feels like an uphill battle or that you're alone in this work or that you're being shamed and blamed and we can have a bad day, we can be messy and like in a fight, but like on average, as a pattern, is it you versus them? Then I usually question if this is doable. We need people on our team and vice versa that are like, this is a hard day. I'm upset and I care about you. That sort of thing is what I look for in partners. Next questions. Most of my friends are cool with my non-monogamy, even if they don't know how to help. I learned a while ago I can't ask them for polyamorous advice, but there's one person who keeps quote unquote joking about how it will never work. And if polyamory is so successful, how come I'm still on dating apps? Excuse me. Okay, this is a friend? Okay. And I'm not sure if I should say something or just let her stay ignorant. What do you think? So I have heard that one before. If polyamory is so great, why are you still on dating apps? Because that is the monogamous metric of success. Relationships, especially in non-monogamy, but in general, change all the time. My availability changes, my mood changes of how open I feel to people. A relationship has an arc and then it calms down and we maybe pull away from each other and no regrets. And also now I have more time. Like the definition of failure or success is so in another universe from monogamous norms. I'm not saying all monogamous people, but monogamous norms of what is good or bad. So it sounds like this person has like a lot of attitude about like trying to shame you and trying to poke holes in the way you're living your life. So fuck them is my first reaction if I'm being real. Like, because it doesn't sound like it's operating in good faith. If it was somebody coming to you being like, I'm confused by this. I'd love to learn more. Or like, even if they ask an ignorant question, but you can tell they care about you and they're worried about you. I'm so worried. Like, is this actually working for you because you're still in the apps? Like that would be different. And I would probably engage in that in a bit more like honest, friendly answer. I would probably give them a real answer. But if somebody is just trying to make me feel bad, if they're just trying to create doubt, if they are just angry that I'm living my life a certain way that has nothing to do with them, I just let them struggle. That's not my business. I probably will, depending on how aggressive they are, like say, can you not, or some version of that. I usually try to match energy for energy, in that sort of scenario. But yeah, joking about how it's not working. Look, if you don't want them to joke about it, do you feel comfortable asking them, like, can you not? Do you feel comfortable pushing back on them, even if it's a joke in return? Um, Everybody has their own style of how they like to push back, but it doesn't sound like a question that they're legitimately asking. It sounds like they're just trying to make you feel bad. So I don't really give people like that my energy. Energy is precious. Like, can we give it to people who we feel it will be reciprocal or that it's safe to give them our vulnerability. So But yeah, I got that kind of shit from people for the first 2 or 3 years. Plus I was like 25 at the time, and so everyone thought it was a quarter life crisis or it's a phase or whatever, because she's like, but yeah, now I'm 12 years in. This is actually my livelihood now, you know. Didn't mean for it to be, but it just sort of organically grew into that. People know it's not a phase. I don't get those questions anymore, I guess is my point. So like with time, people will get that, yeah, they don't understand it, but are you happy? That should be at the bare minimum. That's my bare minimum standard for people who don't understand polyamory. I don't get it, but I'm glad you're happy. Anything under that, you can go fuck yourself. You know what I mean? Like it's you're welcome to not understand me, but don't make that my problem, you know? I support people having like a little bit of self guardedness in that. It's usually just projection. Like 90+ percent of the time, it's like they were cheated on and they're angry about it, or they hooked up with someone who said they were polyamorous, but really they just treated them like shit. And so now they hate all polyamory, right? And they just want to make fun of you and like have power over you to get their power back over that person. They're like fighting a proxy war, you know? It's like there's often a battle internally in them that they're so upset about you, you know? And also it's not okay to like act like that too. So I don't know. You can decide if you want to push back or how, but that's not cool. So next question. One of my metamors is often passive aggressive. She will use a nice tone of voice and even do a nice thing or say a compliment before then saying something sideways or backhanded. It messes with my confidence around her. I've been feeling bad about myself around her, but no one else in the polycule sees it like I do. Is it possible I'm just too sensitive? I hate that too. It's sort of related. Like that's in a similar vein to a friend making a joke, right? Of like saying something nice, quote unquote, in a, let's not say nice because it sounds like they're being a jerk. Saying something in a soft, gentle tone, but the content of it is intended to make you feel bad about yourself. I confront the content of it, you know? And again, you'll have your own style. Like, for some people, I'm like, oh, I'm surprised you felt comfortable saying that to me. You know, just put it back on them, right? Like, because you're the one being out of line, you should be confronted with your own reality of who you are, right? Like, if they're capable of feeling shame, maybe they will feel a little bit of it. Shame can be helpful for some people. Um, but yeah, like I think in general, if you're feeling low on confidence around just one person and you're identifying that it happens like in relation to how they're speaking to you, that's good information. That's not all in your head, right? That's a pattern that you're naming. And so it doesn't matter if everybody else in the polycule sees it like you do. Like if you are noticing, I don't like how I feel in this person's presence repeatedly because of the words they say, like that, don't, your reaction doesn't have to be theirs. Like, but that is like disappointing if the rest of your polycule is not at least curious of, you know, oh, you're having a different experience with this person than I am. Like, why? Or, you know, what's happening? If it's being used in a dismissive way of like, oh no, well, they're always nice to me. So what you're saying must be all in your head. I confront that too personally. So I can't speak to what your meta's intention is. Like if she's trying to make you feel that way, or like if her actions are universally disrespectful, like if everybody would agree if you got specific with what the actions are, but don't ignore that you don't like how you feel after she says things to you. We can go with benefit of the doubt depending on who it is. Like if we assume good intent, and that is a big if, that there could be some reasons that things come across wrong. Like sometimes neurodivergence can make a person like not know social cues and like they are received in a way that is considered rude or sarcastic. Like there was a group of dudes that I was around that they were showing off the tricks that they had trained their dogs to do. And I noticed that some of them had similar hand signals with their dogs, for example. Um, and it was clear, big picture. These were all dudes who were like, look how great a trainer I am, and I'm, in charge of my dog. I'm leader of the pack. Like that was kind of the vibe, especially they were like peacocking and flexing around each other. And but I was noticing that some of them had very similar, specific, unique signals. And I was like, oh, you all got taught by the same person. Like you had the same teacher, dog trainer teacher. And one of my partners was like, oh, you called out their toxic masculinity or whatever. I can't even remember what it was, but it was like you called them out. They were trying to be alphas and you like cut them down. And I was like, I did? I didn't think I cut them down. I thought I did pattern recognition, and so that's if we're assuming benefit of the doubt, is that sort of like if somebody says something shitty, are they trying to, and even then, like you want to know, like I want to know, oh, if I were to name that this person actually had a teacher, if I were to name that in this moment, that is like perceived as trying to put them down. Okay, maybe I don't name that in this moment, maybe I just let them show off and have that be nice, that sort of thing. So if that is in the mix, can we look at it, like if they're otherwise kind and don't want to make you feel bad, would they be mortified that they made you feel bad? That can be something that we ask about. And sometimes people are socialized differently, like, yeah. But sometimes there is bad intent. Sometimes there is bad intent, even if it's not conscious in them, even if they're like not really aware that they're doing it, they just feel insecure around you. And then they talk to you and you feel that they're like trying to make you feel small so that they can feel less small. If sometimes it's very much vibes and like, animal instinct. It's not like they're specifically intending. Doesn't matter. If they're making you feel like shit, then they need to know about that. And especially if that is, because they don't like you or they don't want you to feel powerful or whatever. Um, yeah. So my reaction again ranges something from like, what exactly did you mean by that? Like make them explain themselves. It is something that I do. I'm like, what do you mean? Like what is that about? Or it says who or whatever. I just answer a question with a question and like make them try and defend themselves. If they know that this is what they're doing, that'll become clear usually in that moment. Um, so it ranges from that to like, yeah, wow, you are a dick, like sometimes I'll just be direct. So yeah, it depends on what you feel like saying or doing about it, but don't talk yourself into ignoring it. Yeah, that's an important pattern, it sounds like. Yeah. It is true that sometimes, I'm not saying this is your situation because it didn't sound like it in the question, but it is true that sometimes we do project, like if I'm feeling really, like there was a person that I felt like really academically insecure around. I was educated in the US, and so I had a subpar education on the global stage. Period. Like that's an objective fact. And so I'm like catching up in adulthood on some of like the texts that I didn't read or the theory that I didn't even know existed because I was deprived of it in the US. And in the presence of there's this one person who like every time I was around them, I was like, I'm so stupid, And so I was projecting onto them that they thought that I was stupid or that they were like talking down to me. And then, like, years later, I hung out with them again, and they were still themselves, but I felt a little bit more confident. I didn't feel so acutely in pain about that topic. And I was like, oh, they probably weren't trying to make me feel small. I just felt small, and then I was like assigning intent to them for that. So that sometimes can happen. But yeah, when it's a meta more, when it's somebody that's like already in a position that could veer competitive, could veer, antagonistic, from monogamous conditioning, then I interrogate it a little bit more closely because we want to be extra sensitive to not falling into that kind of antagonistic pattern with someone in that role. You don't have to like them. I'm just saying, like, we don't want an antagonistic pattern if we can avoid it. Hope that helps. That sucks. Um, I do love that you're doing this introspection though. Okay. Next question. I'm talking to someone who's new to polyamory. I'm not sure what we are or what we could be. Do you recommend anything for people who date someone brand new? Sure. I actually just made on Patreon 2-ish weeks ago a video about experience gap polyamory dating. The image thumbnail says something like, "Are they quote unquote more polyamorous?" I might do a short video public for Instagram and TikTok soon on that topic because I know that it happens a lot. And the longer that you're polyamorous, the more likely it is you'll meet people who are like less experienced or have like less time doing this. It starts to average out like once you're like past 5 years, everybody often is more or less in the same boat. But yeah. Um, so that is yeah, that's something that is very common. You're not alone. Um, so I won't say everything from that Patreon video here because it's more succinct if you just go watch that. I think it's like 20 minutes. Again, I'll try and make a 60-second version, but that is the bane of my existence is trying to make something efficiently effective and bite-sized. So I won't say everything here, but I will offer a couple of questions that might be helpful. Is everyone involved willing to grow? Like, if you're the long timer and this person is newer, is everyone willing to grow? Like, is this person curious and learning and, open mind and like wanting to be the best version of themselves? Like, are they listening to things and reading things and whatever? That could be a good sign. They don't have to. It's not like we're giving someone an exam to prove that they're willing to be polyamorous. It's just like, are they trying to grow? When confronted with a thing they did, are they like, huh, how could I do that differently? Do they want to grow? And do you also feel that way? Does everyone involved want to grow? Because sometimes we can get comfortable doing this a long time and we're doing it a certain way with certain people. And when we're with somebody who might have different sensitivities or different thoughts, or it's just been a long time since we were really imagining things from a monogamous lens and we didn't realize, like, oh, yeah, when I said that, that was kind of hurtful to you because I thought we were operating from a different worldview and we're not totally yet. So, like, yeah, what I said was just hurtful. Like, are you willing to also acknowledge that and be like, whoops, I hurt you? Everybody is capable of harm. Everybody is capable of harm. And just because we're doing this longer does not mean we can't mess up, right? We can absolutely mess up. So, I think it's really important for long timers to uh, you might naturally be in somewhat of a guidance role in terms of like teaching them how you want to be treated. Like, hey, it's not cool to just tell me graphic details of your night with this person. I don't want to know that, right? Like sometimes we have to educate a person of how we want to be treated, but specifically how we want to be treated, right? Not this is how polyamory goes. I really discourage any language that is like, hey, you're brand new. Let me tell you how polyamory looks. Because it doesn't have to. It looks a million ways. And so can we try to avoid speaking with authority of like, we know best always, and instead make it a lot more like in our dynamic, this is what I would like to do, or this is what I know I need, or this helped me once. Do you think that might help you? Like we can still be in somewhat of a guiding role because we do have a little bit more exposure to potential solutions to problems. But yeah, do you also want to grow? Do you want to soften? Do you want to expand? Do you want to be reminded of what it is to be actively compassionate and actively patient? A lot of times that is needed for someone who's like, this is all brand new. I'm really wary of a dynamic that is like the newer person looking to the longer term person for guidance on everything. That can get dicey because you are peers. And so it's hard to be teacher, student, and peers. That is very delicate to navigate. And I say never, but like be careful or maybe don't. It's like, um, unless you have experience navigating that sort of a caliber of negotiation, that could become, yeah, um, exploitative or, even if you don't mean to, that could become manipulative. That could just be a power dynamic that is easy to fuck up. I'll put it that way. Um, so yeah, even if it's friends with benefits, even if it's like something that you're not trying to build a life with a person if they are newer, I still try to like let them know how I want to be communicated with. Yeah. So everyone being on the same page, everyone's expectations in the same place. Honestly, I'd rather be with someone who's newer to polyamory, but is like talking about everything and curious and like trying to grow, rather than someone who's been doing this for a decade and has just like a decade of bad habits and is like stubborn and is like, nope, I'm always right. You know what I mean? Those are extremes. But I'm also curious, like, why is the newer person polyamorous? This is something I go into in that video because if they're like, if they found the word and they're like, oh my God, there's a word for it, that I get pretty optimistic about because that tells me that it's resonating with something in them. And that tells me that they're more likely to be invested in doing this for themselves, regardless of if they're with you or not. Are they polyamorous because they really want to be with you specifically? That is not a condemnation. Sometimes that can work out to something sustainable. And also, it can be a little bit more hot, cold if they want to stick through the hardest parts of this, if the goal is maintain relationship rather than pursue polyamory. So if they are hating it and continue to hate it, then I start to get less optimistic of like how long could you keep doing that before somebody hits a breaking point. Um, but it doesn't even have to be like for you. If they're trying to be non-monogamous for someone, like if you're going on a date and someone is like, oh yeah, well, my spouse wanted to open up and so I'm doing this. And that's the only reason they're polyamorous. Maybe you as the longer term polyamorous person are a little bit more cautious of how volatile this dynamic might be. Even if they're great and you would love to get closer to them, like understand the context of, how unpredictable this could be, how, yeah, uh, secure their investment in like this way of life and doing this work is. It's not a bad thing. Like I said at the start of this chat, it's perfectly valid if people decide they don't want to do this work. Like even if they want to be polyamorous or they consider it an orientation and they're like, I don't have enough hours in the day to have these many conversations. So I want something a little bit less complex. You can choose to not do this work. So it's not a condemnation if someone opts out. But for the longer term polyamorous person who's like, this is me, this is always going to be me. That's my situation. I could never be monogamous again, period. Then weirdly, like that can make the longer term polyamorous partner somewhat vulnerable to getting their own heart broken, or to feeling like they were an experiment or they were like someone was a tourist in their life and then left. It's like that's kind of a harsh way to frame it, but that's how it can come across, or that's the feeling that it can instill sometimes. And so I do encourage people to be a bit self-protective um, when people are ambivalent, when people are unsure. It's like you can do whatever you want. It's just like risk reward type of thing. Um, yeah, there was a person, I think I might have talked about this on a previous live, but there was a person some years ago that I hooked up with and I was like, "Oh, this person really wants me to be their teacher, and they're not sure if they want to be polyamorous, but they're hot and it's a fun hookup and whatever. Like I'm feeling excited, but then I had a huge drop after our date and I realized this person is not capable of aftercare for me. Like we hooked up and it was all me giving to them. And then like they just didn't have any experience with like giving to me in return or taking care of me and tending to me. And I didn't like that feeling. Now I can pursue my own tending to, I can, receive care from other people as well. But I was like, I don't think I want to do that. I don't want to drop every time I hang out with this person unless they are able to like pretty quickly get with a program of this is what I'm going to need after we spend time together if I'm going to feel okay, you know? And that can happen a lot if there's a teacher student dynamic is like the more the more senior quote unquote person can they need care too, and is this reciprocal? Yeah, so I wound up not deciding to continue hanging out with them. And then like a couple years later, we got dinner randomly and I didn't really like we stayed friendly, but we didn't really keep hanging out because I said I don't think this is going to work for me. And we got dinner, and they were monogamous again. And I was so glad I was not along for the ride of them figuring that out, because they were probably going to get there anyway. There's no amount of like me being an attractive example of polyamory to make a person want polyamory for themselves, right? And so this person is monogamous, and they were questioning, and they were curious, and they were like 2 years younger, and then they landed on monogamy. And from our first hookup, I had a drop. So if I had stayed with them for 2 years and then they left because they wanted monogamy, I could have been devastated, right? So I think it can be easy to get cocky of like, "Oh, well, I'm polyamorous, so, like, I know how to do this." Do you with someone who's unsure? Because that can be a specific type of volatility that can knock you on your ass, And so, yeah, I really encourage newcomers to be self-protective of people who assert themselves as authority figures and maybe like not in good faith. Like it can be really easy for newcomers to get manipulated or to have their inexperience exploited, and also longer timers, like somebody doesn't have to be trying to hurt you. If I had gotten with this person for 2 years, they wouldn't be like trying to hurt me. They're just figuring their shit out. But it would have been not stable for me. And because of how I reacted to them in the first place, it was probably not going to be a fun ride for me to be on. So I was really grateful that past me had removed myself when I realized, I don't want to feel this way very often. Um, there are people who are questioning who I'm like, I would hook up with you whenever you're in town if you want, because I don't feel highs and lows with this person for some reason. It's just easy and friendly, and I'm not going to be devastated if they're monogamous tomorrow. So the connection will also tell you how risky it feels, to have uncertainty or inexperience. Next question. Okay. How do you navigate polyamory with a small kid? Oh, I wanted to speak to this because I'm not a parent and I get this question a lot. So, with parenting guidance, since I'm not a parent myself, I can suggest other resources. So, if you want to write this down, or it will be in the transcript that I upload to Patreon, Remodeled Love on Instagram and TikTok. They have a polyamory and parenthood navigating non monogamy as parents of young children. They have a book, an ebook. So if you Google that phrase, that they offer a lot of resources on that topic. Ready for Polyamory, Laura Boyle is a parent. She just published a book called Monogamy in This Economy. I think you can pre order it. I don't think it's out yet. That talks about finances and childcare. La Vida Loca, Avita Sawyers, I don't know how much she like publicly speaks on it, but she does one-to-one support with people, and she is a parent and she's very experienced. The podcast that I was on a couple weeks ago, making polyamory work, that's by That Polyam Mom on Instagram, TikTok, Libby Sinback. And she talks a lot about it. Her podcast has a lot of episodes about it, right? Like, so there are creators that are speaking from lived experience. I ain't a mom. I don't want to be a mom. I'm happy to be with people who have kids, but that's also a different experience. I'm not the one negotiating the well-being of that kid, like unless I were to become a like integrated life partner with a person and we like decided to be parents together, right? That's not something I've ever had. So yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn or offer bad advice. They vlog about it. There's another account called Three Lesbians, One Bed. They vlog about it. But I don't think they're like offering advice. They're just like sharing their polyamorous parenting experience. And Bae Leche, Bae Leche, Leche. She also works one-on-one with people, and I found her when she was, like, pregnant, like, blogging about, like, posting all about being pregnant and dating, being pregnant and kinky, and, now she has 2 little ones, and, like, she's very open about it and generous with her experiences. Um, yeah, so I wanted to offer those. Those are who came to mind. Um, Maybe you relate to some of them. If you don't, maybe they know other resources. I also have my non-monogamy book list, on my Patreon and in my link tree. So that could also have some probably has some parenting resources. Comment in the chat is there's Happy Poly Family on Instagram too. There you go. Okay, that's 5 minutes or so. Okay, why do people assume if you're polyamorous, you must be queer? Um, because they don't know what they're talking about. I don't know. It's a divergent path, right? Like it is a non-normative way of building relationships. And for a lot of people, their only experience with people going against norms is just like queerness, and people going against heterosexuality. But plenty of straight people are polyamorous, So it's just there's not enough examples. We hope to continue to have examples in the media and stuff, and people like myself being fine being public and being open about our experiences. But like, yeah, there are a lot of queer people who are polyamorous. And I think for people who already the norms don't fit them, they have like there's fewer barriers to being like, well, this norm doesn't fit too. I think straight people, if they are comfortable financially, if they're like, you know what I mean? Like the more that the systems are working for you, the more it's like, oh shit, and I'm polyamorous, but I have all of this that might be jeopardized by going against the system. That tends to be like harder for people. There's more barriers. So like I think we do, not scientific research. I don't know the numbers on this, but I tend to see fewer people in that position move to non-monogamy until like they retire, until they're like older or they become disabled or they like, they're out of the workforce. If like now the system is starting to decreasingly work for them anymore, then miraculously they're like, I want to be swingers or I want to like open up our 50-year marriage or that happens all the time. And so I think a lot of people want this. It's not a queer issue, but I think queer people, trans people, people who just like, well, the ladder wasn't built for me, so I won't even try to climb it. I'm building my own ladder. I might as well add this because this feels good too, So there's like weirdly, yeah, I think a lot of the younger people who are non-monogamous, a lot of them are non-normative in other ways. But there's also, Marjani Lane posted recently, like, something to the effect of, "Your triad isn't working because, they're bisexual, not biamorous." And I thought that that was an interesting conversation to start, because sometimes people are bisexual and they are attracted to multiple genders, but they only really want to build a life with, or they only feel romantic love towards one gender, And so sometimes people create, like if there's like an MMF triad or something, they'll create this triad because they like having threesomes or they're sexually attracted. And then they're like, but I'm not in love with you, Like, and then it's essentially a V trying to function as a triad. And yeah, so sexuality and amory are different things. So, case in point. Okay. In the last few minutes, we'll go to another question submitted. See if I can answer that real quick. This one says, why do people feel so viscerally anti people's choice to be poly? Yeah. Well, I think I've touched on this a little bit in the questions leading up to this, of people like projecting their own stuff onto you, especially if they've been cheated on or have cheated. If they have done a form of non monogamy that there is shame or resentment around, then any other form of non monogamy is going to get a little bit of that on there, right? People who like, there's plenty of monogamous people I've talked to that they're like, yeah, tell me about your life. And I mentioned this and they're like, cool. So anyway, like, what do you want to do? Like, they don't care. There's plenty of people who do not care. And so if someone is very anti your non-monogamy, and this question says viscerally against, then it struck a nerve in them, right? And who knows why? It could also be like I come from purity culture. I come from a very fundamentalist group that I was in. Excuse me. So like that could also be someone's upbringing that they were taught anything deviating from like a religious fundamentalist, for example, monogamous marriage, anything deviating from that is bad and wrong and sinful and like evil as an extreme. But then they viscerally react like, oh no, this is evil, right? Like I had that experience towards some types of sex when I first left the cult that I left, where I was just like, "Oh no, that," like I recoiled from it like a flame, it was very much like deeply ingrained. Why? It had nothing to do with that kind of sex, and later I might try it and be like, it's not for me, but like the visceral reaction is a reflection of something in their life, either their social conditioning, their own fears, or their association of this equals unsafe. This equals dirty, this equals sin or whatever it is. So then seeing you be non-monogamous, now you are a symbol of that thing. And it's not about you, right? Because you're not powerful enough to destabilize a person to their core like that, especially if you don't really know them that well. It is pre-existing and you just happen to be the person stepping in to like reflect that back to them. So I don't know. I don't hang out with those people. I try not to spend time with those people, and I definitely have gotten better at not taking it personally because it's not, you know? But that comes with, like, repetition. That being visible online, I got very good at this, not taking people's hurt feelings personally at my existence. But yeah, it comes with time. So, okay, time to go. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, I really appreciate you. I really appreciate my Patreon and my patrons. Thank you so much. And yeah, I will see you next month. I hope you have a great July. Take care. Bye.